So, we're here, doing stuff, which is exciting. I see everyone energized, happy to be part of something bigger than yourselves. Let's start with something fundamental. I have a question on the screen. What is media? Who in this room, and this is a free hit, who would like to answer that question? Am I to take it that all of you have signed up for a 3-year degree which will cost you thousands and thousands in tuition fees and maintenance loans, and you don't know what you're doing? Is that true? Content. Media is content. It's a form of communication. Interesting. You've got content, you've got a form of communication. Now let's unpack that bit. Content can be many different things. Form of communication. How does it act as a form of communication? Mass communication. So you have one thing broadcasting to many. Is that what media is? Yeah? Cool. That fucking rules. What about social media? Is that that? When I contact somebody via WhatsApp, is that like that? Or is it like that? Ah, but that's still media, right? Oh fuck. It's a bit more complicated than we thought. Wow. Okay. But a form of communication is interesting. Okay. Any others?
I guess it's like consume.
Something that can be consumed. Cool. So, in a mediated relationship, you have somebody producing something to be consumed by someone else. I like that. I like the idea of consumption here, that you produce media to be consumed. Although, if you look at the stats for my YouTube channel, nobody's consuming that shit. But it's still media, so maybe consumption isn't the most important aspect of this. Do we have any other people who have ideas of what media is?
Curated.
It can be curated. What does that word mean?
Like made, but like heavily checked.
And edited and so on. Media is curated, it is constructed. That is a very, very important point. Mediation is a fundamental process by which we understand the world. So media content is produced, and then that informs our understanding of the world, but media content is never the world itself. It is always a construction of. It is created in particular ways. It is created from a particular position or outlook, or what we would call subject position, and it offers at best a partial understanding of the world itself. Yet, we as consumers of media are tempted to think that the media provides us with an unabashed and accurate representation of the world itself. No media does this. All media is constructed and, as you say, curated in particular ways, usually to present a particular ideological position on events, which is why we're going to study ideology in this module. See how it fits together already? Fucking genius. What is media? We have some ideas here of what media is. What's interesting to me is that some people are still saying media is about broadcasting, and to an extent it is. But that is a historical period for media, which seems to be getting less important as time goes on. Broadcast media is still important, And understanding how broadcast media works is still a very important thing. And it's deep. You will still do modules based around principles of broadcast journalism. You will do film studies. You will do journalism studies. Journalism is, in itself, a practice of broadcasting. That is, producing content to be distributed to as wide a number of people as possible. Journalists don't do that. They find themselves claiming unemployment benefit because they're not very good at their job at that point. But there are other types of media too, media that we use in order to satisfy our needs, which don't fit into a broadcast model. Most digital media usage, for example, is not of a broadcast type. When I troll people on Twitter, X as it's now called, I can't get used to that, and I do this extensively on a daily basis, I am not broadcasting. I am specifically targeting imbeciles that I see on X in order to hurt their feelings. That's important to know that there is difference. So media can be used in different ways. Media, therefore, isn't a singular, but we might want to look for a way of defining it in a singular fashion. Media can be all of these things, but the traditional way of thinking about media is something or someone situated between an object and a subject. So you have a message being sent, you have the medium, and I am acting as a medium right now, talking, etc. And you have the receiver, you guys. So at this point in time, we have a perfect example of the classic definition of media. We have theories about what media is over here. We have me talking, the medium, and we have you guys receiving, which is the subject. Everyone clear so far? This is traditionally how media has been thought of. Media is the point at the middle of these things. Therefore, media is a means of communication. It is a way to communicate. If we think of media in this way, which is exactly what was said, then what we have is a way of encompassing not just the mass broadcast media, but also person-to-person communication via social media, for example, because that is a means of communication. We're all okay so far? Different mediums will have different ways of communicating in terms of scope, in terms of range, and in terms of objective. But at basic level, media is a means of communication. That can include enterprises, obviously companies and so on use media, social institutions, cultural establishments, the fourth estate. I don't know if Elena will talk about the fourth estate yesterday or might in the journalism course. Fourth estate means the news media is a way of keeping democracy in check, or propaganda. These are all instances. If we want to look for a definition, what are media? Technologies that communicate messages to audiences in different parts of a region. That's really unspecific. But it'll put it up for a good reason, because we need to keep a general definition of media quite general, because there are so many different types of media. We are not talking about objects, but we are talking about means of communication. And Dan Law, he talks about these in the context of propaganda or democratic sources of truth. Media are essential to politics, democracy, social order. Media are absolutely fundamental to the running of and maintenance of civilized society. Without media, there is no such thing as civilized society. There are arguments that have been made that media is actually fundamental to the formation of society itself. Before mediums were used to communicate information between people, we were basically just cavemen living in caves, battering the shit out of each other with clubs. My knowledge of cavemen comes exclusively from Captain Caveman, the cartoon, and that's how I saw it. right? Until the use of mediums to communicate information, humanity itself really didn't exist in how we understand humanity. So media is fundamentally important. But why do we study the media is much, much more important than that. As I alluded to at the beginning, I research and study mediums like virtual reality, augmented reality, video games, etc. I used to research smartphones, but fundamentally, and this is why we study media, this is why I study media, and this is why you are studying media. Media is what we engage with to understand the world. All our understanding of the world itself is through media. I think, come on now, no. I went through the education system. That's how I understand the world. Education system is a form of media. Education system is a way to communicate particular information to subjects in order for them to understand the world in a way which is desired by those who founded and maintain the education system. You want an example of this? Who can tell me what's wrong with this room? Is this room like your front room at home? Why not? It's not comfy. It's not meant to be. But that is a nice point. I like that. What else?
It's very formal and there's no softness.
But how is it formal?
It's not all sitting in rows and ones.
You're all sitting in rows, right, and
No,
you're all looking at a screen. What does this tell you about the education system? What technology? How? You might think that's funny. It is funny. It's also true. Your education is organised spatially around media. You're all pointing at that direction, at the screen. What does that tell you about what's important in education? Stuff on the screen. The media orients our bodies in a particular way to face that. The fundamental aspect of education is that you are organised to look in a particular way. That the media is the most important part of the educational process. If it wasn't, we'd all be sitting in different ways. No, you've got to sit that way. And what should happen, and what the university actually desires, is that the person who is delivering this lecture stands right here, because then they can talk into the microphone and give a really clear sort of thing. But I don't like to do that because I just don't like to do it. It's just not my thing. Plus, I have to keep on walking, otherwise it gets a little mess and my brain starts to scramble if I don't move. Right? Media is what we engage with to understand the world. The education system itself is a medium which uses media to communicate particular messages. You probably never thought about it in this way, but your education so far has been an exercise in indoctrination. A particular kind of indoctrination, but indoctrination nevertheless. An ideological indoctrination. You have been asked to study subjects and to do things, and you will hear this word so much in the next 3 years, which make you employable. Why do you need to be employable? What's the point? And do what? Well, takes a very cynical view of the world. I like it. But, yeah. I mean, at a base level, that is correct. At a more sophisticated level, your ideological indoctrination works to make you good little boys and girls. Because you don't just get a job to not die. There are other ways of avoiding death, I should add, as well. There are ways to do it. But hands up, how many people in here would like to own their own home one day? Yeah, interesting. How do you do that? Yeah, fuck us. Well, in an ideal world, this would be what happens. You work really, really hard in order to obtain a deposit for a house, and then you give that deposit to a mortgage company, who then give you a big loan, which you will pay off over a period of 25 to 40 years for the mortgage, right? Ideologically, what does the mortgage do? Well, it means you've got a big bill at the end of every month. And you need to keep on paying that bill, or the bank will take the house back off you. That's what's called repossession. So, you stop partying, stop spending all your money on drugs and books, and you be a good little boy. Don't cause trouble. Don't do anything that could cost you your job. In fact, you work harder at work to try and get more money, so you have more things that you can have in your house. You spend your weekends going to Dunelm instead of going on piss. My friend, this is your future. It's coming at you. And it sucks balls. But it's actually the product of an indoctrination process that begins right at the beginning of your life. You are plastered with images and messages daily telling you that this is the way that you should live. Just look at your social media accounts. Look at Instagram when people show you pictures of their home. That is an indoctrination process. Many of us don't watch television anymore, but those of us who do will recognize that adverts are all about home improvement. And television programs are all about how to make your house nicer, and where to buy, and how to be how to buy in the desirable area next to the good school. Fuck you care. Well, you do care because you have been ideologically programmed to care from a very early age. You see that is success. Yeah? Successful life is having all that stuff. Why? Because you've been told that. And you've been told it by the media. The media has constructed a reality that tells you that this is the way to live. This is success. Once you have all that shit in place, you can be a smug, middle-class piece of shit on Instagram, posting pictures of your perfect house with your kids and your this one hubby. Because media has created our reality. Media has created the conditions by which that is an ideal. And do you know what? There's nothing wrong with that vision. If that's how people want to live, that's how people want to live. I've got no problem with that. I don't like it, it's not for me. But I don't like to say it. It's not like my life is bad, so maybe that's nice. But it's a media construction. Why is it a construction? What does it benefit? Well, it benefits all sorts of things. It benefits the state. It means it has stable individuals in it who aren't likely to kick off all the time because you're afraid about losing the house, losing the job, losing the car, losing the benefits industry. You have a stable supply of consumers for your products all the time. That creates stable economics within the state, where you have a consumer class that will buy products that are produced by industry in that country. It create is economic stability. Economic stability is more desirable than economic instability, a lesson which our current government in this country has failed to understand for the last 30 years. Everyone's happy, well, of a kind. If you're happy with conformity and obedience, like yourself, me, the reason why we study the media, and this might not have been made clear to you in the past, over the past couple of days, the reason we actually study the media is very, very simple. The reason why we study it is to understand how our reality is constructed. It doesn't matter which form of media you're looking at. Looking at film studies, Joanna is telling you how the ideological messages in films are constructed, how they're put together, how they're understood by audiences. You look at journalism, what Elena's doing with you is telling you how current affairs material is constructed to create a particular view of the world. Do a PR course, you're doing the same. The media theory course, we're actually unpicking it. Do social media with me next year, and I am telling you how social media companies manipulate data and information to present the world in particular ways and do it on an individual granular scale. Do video games with me in the third year, and I will show you how video games act to repeat and consolidate ideological positions like colonialism, like misogyny and patriarchal structures of society. This all happens all the time. Now, what you might want to reflect on is that the education system, at least in the universities, is deeply patriarchal. Everyone is forced to watch the front, where the man, because an assumption is made that it's going to be a man, talks, and everyone else listens. I can't think of anything more fucking patriarchal, to be quite honest, but there you go. At least in media we do have a good mix of male and female colleagues, I suppose. But if you were doing, like, I don't know, history of politics is the one that cracks me up. Politics people should know this shit, right? And there's like one woman in politics and like 14 men. And you look at them and think, you know it, but you're not doing anything about it. What the hell is wrong with you people? So, are we okay so far? It's about as simple as I can make it at this point, but I do get that it's a big point. And it does take some unpacking. Okay. Why is it like this? So Roger Silverstone is, unfortunately now, he's passed away, but he's a very important media theorist who established the Centre for Media Studies at the University of Sussex. Do we have anyone from Brighton here? Or South Coast? Okay. The University of Sussex is a really, really important place for media theory in the UK, and my old PhD supervisor also has. What did Roger have to say? We cannot evade media presence or media representation. We're going to depend on our media, both printed and electronic, for pleasures and information, for comfort and security, for some sense of the continuities of experience. It is because the media is central to everyday lives that we must study them. Just to unpack that quote a little, it's a really simple point that Roger Silverstone makes. Media is everything. That's what he's really trying to tell us. He's writing at a time in 1999 where things like print media and so on were actually still relevant. We could probably get rid of that term and just talk about electronic media, because now we don't have anything apart from electronic media. Has anyone read a newspaper, an actual physical newspaper in the last month? One person. Which one was it?
The Mirror, I think.
The Mirror. Any good?
That's alright.
A lot of pictures?
Yeah.
Yeah, tidy. I can't remember the last time I read a newspaper. It wasn't this year. It almost certainly wasn't last year. I read news media every day. You know, I read The Guardian every day. I read The Independent if I have time. I even have a look at Wales Online just because it's funny as fuck. But and the comments on it are just good stuff. But that's my newspaper, right? I don't buy a newspaper. I do go into Tesco and Sketty to get milk sometimes, and I put like things on top of the Sun and the Mail, so people don't know they're there, so they won't buy them. But only people I see buying newspapers are like boomers. That's it. You don't buy in the Daily Mail. It's just like, no, that's not good at all. So we get rid of the pin thing. What Roger Silverstone is trying to tell us here is that media is not just how we understand the world, but it's our companion in the world. It's what we do. What we do is consume media. Now, who's been on a bus this week? Has anyone experienced the joys of First Cymru in fucking Swansea? A company so inept that they defy belief. Of you who, can I just show of hands again, who's been on the bus? Okay, what did you do on the bus? You sat on it and did what? You what? You're the psycho that speaks to people on the bus. But you know who I mean when I'm talking about a psycho, don't you?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you do, yeah. Okay. So there's different types of people on the bus, right? There's people who talk to their friends who they're on the bus with. Then there's the psycho who goes and talks, and for some reason I'm a magnet for that fucking guy. Has anyone else been on a bus where they did neither of those things? What did you do?
Read a book.
Read a book. Is a book a form of media? Of course it is. Put your headphones on and listen to something. And create a bubble of personal space away from everyone else on the thing. So that's what we do. That's what we do with a book. A book's an indicator, right? I'm in my personal space. This is a barrier to me communicating with you. I'm engaging with something else. Headphones do the same. I walk with headphones on. So heads up on this, okay? Sometimes people will come up to me and say hello and I don't hear them. Because I walk with headphones all the time when I'm campus, right? Because it's too noisy for me and I get confused and sort of, that's why I've got badges that say please be patient, because I'm a bit like that, right? But we do it to create bubbles of personal space. Media does that for us. We've got any other examples of stuff we do? Did anyone play a video game on digital game? Fantastic. Something, what did you play? Fantastic. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. That would be something I do, in fact. So I have a switch in my office and that's what I did. Anything else? Anyone watch something on like Netflix or Prime or... Fantastic, good program as well, I like it. Okay, what's my point here? Even in the idle moments that we have, what we do is fill them with meaning. And the big question I didn't ask is, how many of you doom scrolled on Instagram or TikTok? Of course, that's the big one that we do. And this is why I have to limit my screen time now on TikTok. I'm not kidding you, I was clocking like 3-4 hours a day, every day. That's a lot when you've got things to do, right? That is a hell of a lot when you've got like courses to manage and books to write. But I get your point, it is amateur at numbers. Those, our engagements with media, are actually fundamental to our everyday lives. They've been fundamental to our lives for hundreds of years. Before the advent of digital media that we carry with us in our pockets, engagement with television schedules is fundamental to our lives. You guys are actually of an age now where this has become much less important and much less of a fundamental aspect of family and home life, for example. But people would, in my lifetime, of course, I'm old, right? I remember what we're watching on the TV tonight. You might want to think of it in terms of what is all your furniture point towards in the front room. Yeah. This is what freaks me out when people don't got television. What are they doing? It blows my mind. It's like, what are you, interior designers or something? How are you doing this? Prior to the television's emergence in the 1950s, you might think this freaky, but people did this with the radio. People would spatially organise around that. And historically, it goes back in different phases of media. this way. So media has always been fundamental, not just to how we organise our lives, but how we actually conduct our lives. Now, this isn't new. This isn't, what I'm talking about here is not in any way new whatsoever. The first media theorist is that guy. That guy is a Greek philosopher called Plato. I know a little bit about Plato. I have an undergraduate degree, a master's degree, and a PhD in philosophy. So I should know a bit about Plato. If I didn't, it's almost degrees for. But Plato is very, very important to media studies. The first media theorist, and he discussed it in a very, very famous part of his most extensive and important work, The Republic. It's called The Allegory of the Cave. And despite the fact that this was written pre-Christ and was written in ancient Greece, this is a perfect encapsulation of how the media works in every subsequent society. No, still our own as well. So in the allegory, Plato used the example of prisoners chained in a cave who can only see shadows cast on a wall. So imagine for a moment that you guys are chained. Okay, it's a bit creepy and I'm not interested now, but just bear with me. Imagine you are chained in position as you are at the moment. And the light of the outside is the projector, but all you can see is the shadows cast on the wall over there. Okay, so the reality is over there somewhere, but you can't turn because you are chained in position, and all you are seeing is shadows on the wall cast by the light. Are we okay so far? All right. Those prisoners are kept in position like that forever. They can't move. And Plato's argument is this, that when we are in that position, when all we can see is a mediation of reality, we will accept that mediation as reality. Yeah? So, kind of works like this. You have a fire up here, you have the prisoners down there, shadows cast on the wall, and all the prisoners can see are the shadows themselves. And the prisoners come to accept that the shadows are the reality of the world itself, because they have no other point of reference apart from those shadows. Yeah? Kind of sad times if you are a prisoner like that, but you know, they probably did something wrong. So I've got a little sympathy for them. Unless they were the victims of misjustice or something like that. So,
wouldn't they have to be like born in there to believe that though?
yeah.
Yeah. So how could they have done anything wrong?
They could have been bad babies.
Yeah.
There's a lot of it about these days, right? Let's treat the analogy as not being So, Plato's point is that the prisoners are mistaken in believing that the shadows are real, and the world is like the reality they accept from the shadows themselves. But for the prisoners, the mediation of reality has become real, and that is akin to our relationship with the media. Now, your point about the prisoners is really well made, because obviously you could say, well, you know, the prisoners must have experienced reality previously, so how could they be tricked in that way? I get it, right? You could do a whole thing like, has anyone seen Dark Knight film with Bane? I can't remember the title of it. Dark Knight Rises, I think it's called, yeah? Where he makes that stupid speech. I can't stand that character, he's such a stupid voice, Tom Hardy. And he's like, you know, I was born in the dark. That is so hard. Anyway, the point Plato is making here is that we are prisoners. And that we have been the prisoners since birth. Because the way that we understand the world is through the mediation of the world by the media. Plato was making this point even in his time, when actually even the written form of communication was in its infancy when Plato was philosophizing in ancient Athens. We are always in the position of the prisoner. We have been since birth. Since our first interactions with the world, everything has been mediated. We have seen the world through mediation. We have no direct contact with reality, only what is given to us through mediation. And the mediation of reality is never the real. The real is always apart from us. All we have is the mediation of it. Real over here, our experience of reality over there. And I think this is completely fucked up. Well, my friends, don't take a philosophy degree then, because that's what every philosopher argues. Mediation, you might think, well, why is the mediation never real? Because there is always something doing the mediation. And mediation is a process which will always be effective in issues with ideology, politics, capitalism, race, gender, inequalities, etc. There is no such thing as a neutral mediation of something. There is no such thing as neutral mediation going on right now. You are not getting an unbiased opinion of me. I can promise you, my friends, you'll never get an unbiased opinion of me. I guarantee that to you. What the problem some people have realised sometimes is you take things at face value and think, oh, well, Leighton's full of shit, right? But the other lecturers in the department, they give you an no, they don't. It's actually impossible to do that. We live life subjectively and we give our expression of life subjectively. We can't escape that. There is no objective opinion. It doesn't exist. There's so many problems politically. I need an objective opinion. Really? I don't think you do. You're not going to find it. Every form of mediation of reality is in itself not neutral. And therefore, everything that we receive, if this is correct, and it is, we are always being affected by processes that involve these key fundamental shapers in the mediation process. You can learn more about this by reading the materials that I provided. But my fundamental point today is this. The reason why you are doing a media degree and what you will be doing over the next 3 years is really just that point. That's it. A media degree, that's all it is. You will be understanding the processes of mediation. You will not just be understanding them theoretically, as you might well be doing with me across several modules of your degree. You will also be doing them practically. You will become mediators. You will produce journalistic materials. You will produce video content. You will produce audio content. You will produce websites. You will produce... I don't really know why we keep on doing that, because that's dead. But you might produce apps. You might produce... You will produce social media content. You will produce marketing campaigns. You will be the mediators. Those of you who want to go forward and have careers in the media, that's what you're going to be doing. A career in the media is a career in making reality. Because all we receive is mediation. And if you're in work in the media, then you're creating it. You're creating reality for other people. Sorry. Absolutely it is, yeah. I'm not going to get into the object permanency now because I have to finish this lecture. But you know, your point is well made, yeah, it is exactly. Okay. I have a bunch of slides I've got to get through in 10 minutes, so. All lectures are like this, by the way. It's like, all of a sudden I would get there. It's 22, I think, fuck, I've got about 30 slides to get through in the last 10 minutes. Okay. Fortunately, these slides are not really, I can rattle through these really quickly. Fundamental questions that you might well be asked in the first year. With Joanna, what kind of films get made in the Hollywood system? And why? You might think, well, films that make money. True to an extent, but not the whole story. Many of the films made in the Hollywood system reinforce a set of values and cultural norms which are expectations of the capitalist system. For example, my favourite genre of Hollywood, the chick flick, always tells you a fundamental lesson. And see, as we're in a majority position here, where the majority of people in this room are female, let's unpick this right now. Chick flicks tell you that to be happy, you have to marry a rich man. Internalize that fucking message. It's not true. Not in any way, shape or form is that message true. You do not need to marry a rich man to be happy. You don't need to get married at all. You don't need to be with a man. None of that is true. But if you relied on Hollywood movies to understand the world, that is what you would understand. And it doesn't start with the chick flick. Oh no, my friends. It starts with Disney. When you are 2 or less and your parents put on Disney films for you to watch because they're made for kids and they're lovely, you are getting right then the message that in order to be a princess, which is kind of what, right? So in order to succeed in life, your entire aim is going to be find the prince, snare the prince, marry the prince. Not fucked up, my friends? Why does Disney do this? Disney is deeply patriarchal, for one. There's never been a female head of Disney. There ain't going to be a female head of Disney either. And two, well, the patriarchal system is a fundamental aspect of American culture, Western culture, and capitalist culture. At the end of it, what we're actually saying here is that women's role is to not interfere with what men do, instead just be an accompaniment to men. And then you'll be happy. Just don't get involved in the male world. We want to reject those messages, people. Who owns the media and what effects does ownership have? We're looking at this in weeks 4 and 5 of this course, which you should be looking at it in terms of film studies, particularly in terms of journalism, particularly in terms of PR. Really, really can't look at those things without considering these aspects of how media is produced. Because the ownership of media, as we will see in week 4, is essential to how messages are communicated in media. Does technology alter our consciousness of the world? We're looking at this in 4, 5, 6, 7. 8 of this module. Does the type of media that we have change the way that we see the world and act in the world? My friends, this Black Mirror has changed how people see the world more than anything else that has existed before. Try and go an hour without it. And we will look at why that is the case, and how the altering of consciousness is, in many ways, a political thing. Does media violence make children violent? That old fucking chestnut. We will be looking at effects. What are the effects of media? They are not direct. They are subtle and diffuse and indeed mediated. What sort of relationship it is between celebrities and fans? How do parasocial relationships affect our understanding of the world? I, for example, at the moment, am increasingly becoming a Swiftie because Tay-Tay has been attending NFL matches. I've been watching the NFL for 30 years. And now I'm feeling the marriage between American football fandom and Taylor Swift fandom is really settling me in a nice place. And sadly, I can't express my admiration for Taylor Swift directly because I can't go within 500 meters of her. But there's a whole thing. But if I were able to do that, I would. Yeah. Now, we are going to look. This module will encompass theory. Okay? Theory, this is really fundamental. Please take note of this. Theory is not how things are. Theory is a way of thinking about how things are. Every year I'll get an essay that says, Karl Marx said that society was made up of a superstructure and a substructure. No, he didn't. That's not what he thought. He used that as an abstract model to understand how economics works in society. It is an abstraction. It is not how reality actually is. If you go looking for the superstructure, you're not going to find it. Okay? Theories are abstractions which help us understand things. The purpose of theory is to explain, comprehend, and interpret phenomena and put forward suggestions as to why they occur. It is not the same as what actually happens. That's why we have multiple theories. And some theories work in particular ways and don't work in other ways. There is no one all-encompassing theory of everything because of this. But theories are systematic and answer questions. Now, in terms of media studies, the theoretical history of it is something you're going to be reading in the chapter 6 that I've given you by William Merritt. Okay? I'm just going to very quickly talk about where all this comes from. In America, if we were doing this lecture, we would be calling it communication studies. Communications studies really has the same root as media studies, but it does rely much more on what we call language analysis and rhetorical analysis and the pragmatist tradition. I am not going to talk any more about it than this because the UK in general in media studies does not encompass the pragmatist position particularly, so it's not something that we look at. But what we do, and what I've already explained in my beautiful and elegant demonstration earlier, is really the understanding of communication and media as a empirical way of looking at understanding media came largely through Claude Shannon's work in 1948. Shannon proposed that the media works in a particular way when you have an information source, a transmitter, noise, the receiver, and a destination. The receiver decodes the noise, which is a message in a particular way. Nobody really takes Shannon that seriously any longer because we recognise that there are multiple things going on in terms of transmission, in terms of reception, which this can't encompass. But it's a useful heuristic for that idea of media as communication. Heuristic mental shortcut. And it's a very useful shortcut to understanding that every time we refer to media, what we're referring to is the process of communication. As I said, Shannon isn't really taken that seriously any longer. Now we have elements like critical theory, and we'll look at the Frankfurt School in week 7, the week after study break. Look at, obviously you're doing film studies at the moment. From the 50s we have medium theory, we're going to look at that in week 8. Wasserfeld and Katz and the notions of personal influence, we'll look at that actually in week 11. So what I'm arguing here is that media theory starts from a position from communication studies and has different layers of theory layered onto it. It becomes more complicated, it becomes more sophisticated because of this. Culturalism and the integration of things like feminist theory occur in the 1970s, and it becomes a more robust critique of how media industries work and how culture is constructed by the media. That's really what culturalism is all about. That is very, very close to where we are now in terms of how we study media. What we're really doing is looking at the construction of culture and how that affects people in terms of their understanding of reality, like I've been saying earlier. In the 1990s, you see a new field emerge in the discipline, new media, and the question of disciplinary legitimacy. People like me come along and say, yeah, you're all concerned about audiences. Well, guess what? There ain't going to be no fucking audiences in the future. Television's going to die. Nobody's going to watch it. And that's kind of happening in front of our eyes. Nobody watches television anymore. We just watch the football on it. Nearly out the top 100 programmes on television in the last 12 months, Queen's funeral, King's coronation, all the rest of it was football. So we're in a position where media studies in general has reached what we call theoretical maturity. So you're in a proper discipline. You're in a proper subject. Now, one of the key things that we're often told is media studies isn't proper. Media studies isn't a real subject. It's not important. It's Mickey Mouse. And you'll hear all this. You'll hear this from people you live with. If an engineering student or a science student tells you that, use engineering and science against them. Boil a kettle and then throw the contents of that kettle in their face. Media, if we accept the position, which we should, that media constructs reality and therefore is reality, then media encompasses philosophy, critical theory, critical research, deals with the nature of reality as political, social, economic and behavioural. That means that media studies is actually the most important subject, because we're actually dealing with the construction of everyday reality. Could there be anything more constructive than that? Could there be anything more important? Is there anything more worthwhile? But if the scalding with hot water doesn't work, send them to my office and I'll beat the shit out of them. And there ends the lesson for today. See some of you on Thursday. Otherwise I'll see you all next week, where we will talk about how you can do really well at this.
So, screen football, yeah?
Yes.